Hello, everyone. Tonight we're going to plunge headfirst into the clanking, muddy, and often utterly terrifying reality of medieval warfare. Forget those pristine, polished images of knights in shining armor gallantly charging across sunlit, pristine fields. Tonight we'll explore the arduous, brutal, and utterly compelling path of a true medieval knight and the grim, visceral realities of battle in a world utterly devoid of gunpowder tanks or even reliable maps. The Forge of a Warrior. From page to night, our story begins not on the thunderous battlefield, but in the drafty, echoing halls of a great castle with a young boy, barely 7 years old. He isn't there by choice, but by a solemn arrangement. He is a page, sent from his own noble family to serve in the household of a greater lord, a powerful baron, or even a duke. This wasn't merely a polite visit, it was the indispensable first step in the meticulous, painstaking crafting of a medieval knight. There were no military academies or boot camps, no formalized recruitment offices. Instead, a boy learned by total immersion, by constant, watchful imitation, and by sheer grueling repetition. As a page, he learned absolute obedience, intricate courtly manners, and how to serve with quiet deference. He'd run endless errands, assist the castle's ladies with their embroidery or music, and crucially begin his physical training with mock weapons, learning to wield a tiny wooden sword, a small light shield, and to ride with a nascent confidence. Every clumsy movement, every muttered lesson was observed and corrected, often sternly, by the seasoned knights and squires who were his constant, silent instructors. As he grew older, typically around 14, his training intensified and he would graduate to the rank of squire. This was where the truly serious education began, a rigorous apprenticeship that forged muscle and character. He would become the constant attendant to a specific knight, assisting him in every conceivable aspect of his daily life, from dressing him in his impossibly heavy armor to meticulously caring for his prized warhorse, and most importantly, honing his own fighting skills with real, albeit blunted weapons. Imagine him spending countless hours each day, sweat pouring, muscles aching, practicing with the heavy longsword, the balanced lance, and the crushing mace, striking relentlessly at a wooden dummy, a quinton, or sparring fiercely with other squires. This was how they built the immense strength, the crushing endurance, and the lightning reflexes so desperately needed for actual combat. He'd learn advanced horsemanship, not just riding gracefully, but controlling a powerful, unpredictable warhorse amidst the terrifying chaos of battle. Beyond the purely physical, he would absorb intricate tactics, fundamental strategy, and perhaps most importantly, the complex, often contradictory code of chivalry, lofty ideals of courage, honor, unwavering loyalty, a fierce sense of justice, and the solemn protection of the weak and defenseless. This education wasn't gleaned from books. It came from direct, bone deep experience, from intimately witnessing his knight's conduct both in peace and in war, and from endless, repetitive drills that burned skills into his very muscle memory. Finally, usually in his early 20s, after years of dedicated service, after proving his prowess and unwavering courage in battle or in the controlled fury of a tournament, he would be formally knighted in a solemn, often deeply spiritual ceremony, taking sacred vows to protect the church, the defenseless, and his liege lord. The weight of war, armor, and weapons. Now, picture this newly made knight, a figure transformed, preparing for the ultimate test, war. There were no lightweight, high-tech uniforms, no composite materials. His very defense, his lifeblood, was his armor, a massive, custom-fitted suit that could weigh anywhere from a staggering 50 to 80 pounds, sometimes even more for the full plate armor of later periods. First, he'd don a padded gambeson or an arming doublet, thick layers designed to cushion blows and prevent chafing. Next came the glistening, heavy chainmail, a flexible mesh of countless interlocking rings, offering surprising protection. And finally, in the later medieval periods, the intricately articulated plates of hardened steel, masterpieces of the armorer's art, each joint designed to allow movement while deflecting brutal force. Each piece, from greaves to gauntlets, had to be carefully fitted, strapped, and buckled by his ever-present squire, a painstaking process that could easily consume a good half hour. Imagine the sheer physical exertion, the slow, deliberate effort just to put on this heavy second skin, designed not only to deflect blows from swords, arrows, and lances, but also to restrict movement, making every action, every breath, a conscious effort. His weapons were equally formidable, extensions of his own will and strength. The longsword, a heavy, perfectly balanced blade, was his primary companion, used for both vicious cutting and piercing thrusts. He might also carry a brutal mace or a devastating warhammer, blunt weapons specifically designed to crush armor and bones beneath. A sturdy shield, often emblazoned with his family's proud coat of arms, provided crucial, immediate protection. And of course, there was the mighty lance, a long, heavy wooden pole tipped with gleaming steel, designed for the devastating, unstoppable impact of a cavalry charge. His warhorse was no mere steed. It was a specially bred, immensely powerful animal, meticulously trained for the terrifying sounds and sights of battle, its own barding, armor, adding to the colossal weight it carried. Without modern manufacturing, every single piece of armor, every precisely forged weapon, was painstakingly handcrafted by skilled artisans, blacksmiths, fletchers, leatherworkers, making them not just tools, but incredibly expensive, precious, and irreplaceable works of art. The roar of the charge, battle realities, forget the neat, organized lines of a modern army, communicating via radio and GPS. A medieval battle was a horrifying, chaotic, deeply personal, and often bewildering affair. There were no radios, no field telephones, no satellites. Communication on the battlefield was rudimentary at best, shouted commands that were often lost in the din, the piercing blare of trumpets, the thunderous roll of drums, or the fluttering, visual guidance of banners. Once the cavalry charge began, a terrifying wave of thundering hooves, or the infantry lines inevitably clashed in a desperate surge. All semblance of cohesion quickly dissolved into a maelstrom. Imagine the deafening, soul-shaking roar, the ground literally trembling under the thundering hooves of charging horses, the sickening clang of steel on steel, the guttural shouts of men, the agonizing screams of the wounded. The very air would be thick with swirling dust, the acrid smell of sweat, the metallic tang of fresh blood, and the pervasive, cloying stench of primal fear. It wasn't about precision strikes from afar, but visceral, face-to-face, hand-to-hand combat, a brutal, exhausting grind of hacking, thrusting, and parrying. Knights might, in theory, try to target other knights for the valuable prize of ransom, but often it devolved into a simple, desperate struggle for mere survival against a faceless, determined enemy. Arrows would rain down from archers, a deadly, whistling hail, forcing men to huddle behind their shields or fall beneath their deadly shafts. Swords would hack with brutal efficiency, maces would crush bone and armor, and lances would splinter with a sharp crack. Fatigue set in quickly and agonizingly under the immense weight of armor, forcing men to fight for minutes, gasp for breath, rest for mere seconds, and then plunge back into the fray, their bodies screaming. The ground would become a churned up, slick mess of mud, blood, and discarded weapons, a testament to the brutal struggle. The romanticized glory of battle often gave way terrifyingly quickly to the grim, terrifying reality of survival against impossible odds. The test of patience, siege, warfare. Not all medieval conflicts culminated in open field clashes. In fact, many revolved around siege warfare, the long, brutal, and often tedious process of attacking a heavily fortified castle or city. This was less a test of raw courage and more a grueling test of patience, endurance, and applied engineering. There were no artillery pieces lobbing high explosive shells, no aerial bombardment to soften defenses. Instead, besiegers would employ siege towers, massive wooden structures, often ingeniously constructed taller than the castle walls themselves, complete with ramps to allow attackers to storm the battlements directly. They were slow to build, incredibly vulnerable to fire, but terrifyingly effective if they managed to reach their target unscathed. Battering rams, enormous tree trunks, often capped with an iron head, swung by dozens of men with immense force, designed to smash through gates. Defenders would desperately try to drop rocks, scalding hot sand, or even boiling water or pitch on them from above to deter the attackers. Trebuchets and catapults, giant wooden machines, true marvels of medieval engineering, using counterweights or tension to hurl massive stones. Diseased animal carcasses, an early form of biological warfare, or even fiery projectiles over walls. These were the heavy artillery of their day, slowly but surely pounding formidable fortifications into submission. Mining, or sapping, a clandestine and incredibly dangerous technique where sappers would dig tunnels secretly under castle walls or towers, shoring them up with timber as they went. Once beneath the target, they would fill the tunnel with flammable materials, set the timber on fire, and then quickly retreat, causing the tunnel to collapse and hopefully undermine the wall above it, creating a breach. Ladders and hooks, simple, desperate, and often suicidal attempts to scale walls, usually met with fierce and bloody resistance from defenders above. For the defenders cooped up inside the castle, a siege meant agonizing rationing of food and water, enduring constant bombardment day and night, and fighting off relentless assaults with crossbows, longbows, and boiling liquids dropped from narrow murder holes. It was a harrowing war of attrition, with disease, starvation, and thirst often claiming more lives than actual combat. Imagine being trapped inside a besieged castle for months, watching your precious supplies dwindle, your people sicken and die, and the massive stone walls slowly agonizingly crumble under relentless attack without any way to call for swift reinforcements from the outside world. Chivalry, ideals, and brutal realities. The lofty ideals of chivalry were meant to temper this inherent brutality. Knights were sworn to protect the weak, uphold justice, and fight honorably, often even to show mercy to a vanquished foe. They were expected to act as Christian warriors, defending the church and the innocent. A captured knight, especially another noble, might be taken for ransom rather than summarily killed. The concept of ransom was, in fact, a crucial part of medieval warfare's intricate economy. A captured knight was valuable alive, representing a potential fortune. But the grim reality often clashed violently with the shining ideal. War was still bloody, chaotic, and often driven by ruthless self-interest and personal vendettas. Peasants and common folk were frequently brutally treated, caught in the crossfire, and even knights could engage in horrifying atrocities. Chivalry was a powerful moral code, yes, but it was often selectively applied, a lofty ideal struggling to survive in a very harsh, unforgiving world. The knight's pivotal place in society. A knight was far more than just a warrior. He was a pivotal, indeed vital, pillar of medieval society, deeply intertwined with its very structure. He was a lord, holding land, sometimes vast tracts, in fealty to a greater lord, a baron, count, or king, and bore direct responsibility for the peasants living on his domain. He was a protector, obligated by sacred oath and feudal duty to defend his land and people from violent raiders, rival lords, and any external threat. He was a tangible symbol of feudal power, his castle a physical testament to his authority and ability to enforce order. Beyond the battlefield, he might serve in his lord's court, offering counsel or act as a local judge, dispensing justice, however rough, in his own lands. His life was an exhausting cycle of constant training, intermittent, brutal warfare, and the heavy, inescapable responsibilities of his social standing. He was a professional soldier, yes, but also a complex figure, a landholder, a local ruler, and a figure simultaneously of deep respect and often profound fear. The enduring legacy of the knight, the era of the knight, though ultimately changed and eventually rendered obsolete by the devastating advent of gunpowder and massed infantry, left an indelible, dramatic mark on history and culture. Their stories of bravery, their intricate code of chivalry, and the dramatic, captivating imagery of their battles continue to captivate us, fueling countless legends and tales. But behind the shining armor and the romanticized legends was a life of immense discipline, grueling physical hardship, and a profound, often brutal, connection to the visceral realities of war. They lived and fought without the comforts, the technologies, or the rapid communication we possess, relying instead on raw strength, unwavering courage, fierce loyalty, and the resonant clang of steel wielded by their own powerful hands. So, as you drift off to sleep, perhaps you can hear the faint, echoing call of a trumpet across a misty, ancient field, the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer shaping a knight's armor, or the silent, watchful gaze of a lone knight standing guard on his castle wall. Imagine a world where courage was not just a virtue, but a daily, essential necessity, and every battle, every struggle was fought face to face, man against man, in a way we can now only dimly comprehend. Good night.